Hey guys, it's Nicole and I am finally getting around to being able to sit down and film for you guys my birth story. So I had my debrief with my midwife last week, or no, it was this week, sorry. It was like a few days ago, but obviously with a newborn my days of the week are all skewed, so I can't remember what day it was, but it was a few days ago now, and I was able to go through things with her, and I feel like in my head I kind of have more of a better timeline of how things went and the times and that sort of thing. So this is probably going to be a long video, I'm not going to lie. Obviously things didn't go as I would have planned them to go. Obviously getting preeclampsia and all of that was not part of my plan. So yeah, I'm going to try and get through things as quickly as possible, but bear with me because it is quite a lengthy story. So if you haven't watched my 37-week bump date, you should watch that, because at the end of that I have a clip where I basically told you guys that I was admitted to hospital with preeclampsia. I was admitted on the Thursday, and on Friday morning they took me down to birth suite to examine me and see whether or not like what method of induction I was going to need. So on the Friday they examined me and I was 2 centimeters by 1 centimeter thick, and my cervix was quite soft and at like the front rather than all the way up the back. So the plan was that the next day, which was Saturday, that they were going to give me gel into my, like, not into my cervix but near my cervix, which helps to open up your cervix and make it even more favourable for them to be able to break my waters. Basically she did say that she would be able to break my waters, but I said that I would prefer to have the gel so that my cervix was even more favourable. Now the whole time I was in hospital they were super busy, so basically there was no rooms in birth suite at all the next day. So on Saturday when I was supposed to go down to have the gel, they were basically just so busy that they had no rooms and nobody to actually put the gel in. So I basically just waited around a lot that day. I was having tightenings, nothing that was particularly painful or anything like that. Sort of like really mild period pains and kind of like Braxton Hicks contractions. So when they were finally able to take me down, which was like late afternoon on the Saturday, it turns out that the pains that I've been having were actually doing something to my cervix. So my cervix had changed. It was now 3 to 4 centimeters, and I'm not sure, I'm assuming it was still had a little bit of thickness to it. But basically I didn't need to have the gel at all. Like, they could have easily broken my waters, but being that it was like late afternoon and everything like that, I decided that I would like to wait to the next morning to have my waters broken so that I could have a rest. And I guess in my mind what I was hoping was that I would start to labour myself overnight so that I wouldn't have to have my waters broken. So that was the plan. They rang my midwife and the plan was for her to come in at 7:30 to break my waters and get things going. So I, you know, let Ryan know, or he was with me, and then I let my birth photographer know so that she could come in for 7 o'clock. So that night I was having contractions. Again, they weren't particularly painful, but or regular or anything like that. Ryan and I did like go for walks up and down the corridors and up the stairs and stuff to try and get things going. But basically I was contracting, but nothing like really that I thought was labour. And I figured I would go to sleep, and if they were actual labour contractions that they would get worse and that they would wake me up. But I ended up being able to sleep like relatively well that night. So fast forward to Sunday morning and 7:30 comes around. Ryan's there, my birth photographer's there, and we're waiting to go downstairs to have my waters broken. And again, they were super busy, so they had like no rooms in birth suite for me. So basically my midwife came in to look after me and was like, I'm going to go down to birth suite and I'm going to help them out so that we can try and get some room for you. So basically I had to wait for ladies to have their babies before I could go down. So we ended up going down, I'd say about 11:15 to birth suite to have my waters broken. So when we got down there, they just put me on the monitor to make sure baby was happy, and then they went ahead and broke my waters. So I had my waters broken at 11:40, and being the midwife, the first thing that I asked was whether or not my waters were clear. So obviously the waters around baby, you want them to be nice and clear. And at first my midwife thought they were clear, but then as more fluid started to come out, she could see that baby had done a poo inside. So that is called meconium liquor, and basically it means that your baby has done a poo inside, and you don't really know why the baby's done a poo inside. It could be a sign of distress. Sometimes if babies are overdue or something like that, they will do a poo inside. So there's no real way of knowing why that baby's done a poo inside, but it does mean that you have to have continuous monitoring of the baby's heart rate in labor in case your baby is in distress. So that was kind of annoying. It did mean that I had to have monitors strapped to my belly for the duration of my labor, and it also meant that I had to have a pediatrician at the birth so that if the baby came out and wasn't breathing, they could suction any meconium out of its throat before making it breathe. So I kind of just like gave Ryan a rundown of what that meant, and the plan was that if the baby came out and wasn't crying and had to be taken to the pediatrician, I did not want anyone to tell me what the sex of the baby was. I just wanted them to do what they had to, and then when they brought baby back to me skin to skin, then I would be able to look and find out what the baby was. I didn't really want, like, I wanted to see it. I didn't want someone to tell me, if that makes sense. So after they broke my waters, the first thing I wanted to do was get into the shower, because obviously you feel really gross after your waters break. It basically feels like you are wetting yourself like constantly, and I just felt like, I don't know if there was a lot of fluid, but it felt like there was a lot of fluid. It just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. And yeah, it was warm, and yeah, it felt really strange, but yeah, it basically feels like you're peeing yourself. So the first thing I wanted to do was get up to have a shower, and I ended up staying in there for quite a few hours actually. At first I started off on the ball, so like sitting on the ball and like bouncing and rocking and that sort of thing. My contractions started pretty well after my waters were broken. I think my midwife said that I started like really contracting well about like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but I was contracting prior to that, but I wasn't contracting like the 4 and 10 that they would consider me to be in active labor prior to that. So basically I was in the shower. The shower at my hospital has 2 shower heads, so I had both like on my back, and sitting on the ball. I had music playing in the shower, and then I had Ryan was like sitting there, and as the contractions became stronger, like originally I was just bouncing on the ball, and as they got stronger I had to sort of implement things to try and distract myself from the pain. So at first I was kind of just like, I was on the ball leaning into Ryan's lap, and then as they got stronger I found like tapping during a contraction was really helpful. So I basically rock on the ball and slap Ryan's thighs, just going like that. Funnily enough, like, yeah, it just gave me something to concentrate on and to be doing something during a contraction, and I find that that really helped initially. Obviously as things progressed and things got stronger, I had to do other things rather than just that, but I did find that really useful. So at about 3:30 3:30. I did hop out of the shower for a little while because I just felt like I had to change things up a little bit, and at that stage I was getting quite a lot of back pain, and I thought a good position to give myself a bit of a rest, because I felt like my legs were starting to get sore. I thought I would hop onto the bed with I had a bean bag, and go on all fours and lean over the bean bag, if that makes sense. So I have my butt in the air, yeah, to try and relieve some pressure off my back. And also in that position it was really good because Ryan and my midwife could put some pressure on my back and sort of massage or press onto my back. I did have a little spiky ball as well, which was helpful. So at about, I must have been about maybe closer to 3:15, even 3 o'clock, that I got out of the shower to do that. And the back pain by that stage was just getting really unbearable, especially being out from the shower. While I was in the shower I found it quite the heat was really good and was really helping with the back pain, but as soon as I hopped out of the shower, that back pain was so much more intense because I didn't have that hot water. So at 3:30 I asked my midwife if I could have the sterile water injections, which is some 4 injections into your back of sterile water, and by that stage, yeah, my back literally just felt like it was going to rip apart, and obviously I'd heard good things about the sterile water. So at 3:30 I asked my midwife if I could have those, and she asked another midwife to come in and they gave me those injections. Now I am not going to lie, the sterile water injections hurt a lot. I've given these injections to many ladies and everyone screams when they have them, that high-pitched curdling scream, and I was one of those people. Honestly, I just screamed the room down. If anyone was walking past, I probably would have scared the pants off them because of my scream. But it really stings, but it only stings for maybe 30 seconds, and then honestly the next contraction I had no back pain. So I highly recommend the sterile water injections to anyone that's got really bad back pain in labor. Because it is sterile water, you can have it more than once, you can have it 3 times if you need to. It's doesn't have any drugs in it, and it has been proven to reduce the rates of epidurals. So definitely keep that in mind if you're coming up to having a baby and you have back pain in labor, because they are great. And so I had that, and that really helped. After that I got back into the shower, because I just found that hot water was the best thing to relieve the pain of the contractions. By that stage the contractions were quite strong and quite frequent. I imagine, I obviously weren't timing them, but I'd say that they were for every 10 minutes or a few minutes apart. And I will just mention that I didn't have to have any Syntocinon drip, or in Australia it's called Syntocinon. It's a synthetic form of oxytocin. In America it's called Pitocin. I don't know what it's called in the UK or anything like that, but yeah, it's basically the drip in your hand that makes you contract. I didn't need that at all. My body just started contracting by itself just by having my waters broken, which was the best, most ideal situation, because I really didn't want to have that drip, because it was, it limits your mobility because you've got this thing attached to you, and a pole. It just, yeah, it isn't ideal, and also it makes your contractions a lot more intense and difficult to cope with. So I definitely wanted to avoid that, and I did, which was great. So yeah, basically I hopped back into the shower, and I found the best thing to be doing when my contractions got really strong was to be doing figure 8s with my hips, and I had the jets, the 2 shower heads on my back with really hot water. at one stage there I did have one that was hot and one that was cold, so then as I was doing like the figure eights I'd get like a different sensation, so I'd get like a hot sensation and a cold sensation, and that was really good as well. I think that wasn't intentional. I think I accidentally like turned one off or something like that, and then I don't know, but I don't think it was intentional, but it ended up working out quite well. So yeah, every time I had a contraction I would just do my hips in like figure eights, and I found that really helpful. And in the back of my mind I was trying to make sure I relax everything, so relax my shoulders, relax my mouth, relax my cervix, and as I was doing that figure eight I was hoping to obviously turn Bub around. Because I was getting lots of back pain, we did suspect that baby had like its back against my back, and so I was trying to help Bub to rotate down. And also by standing up I wanted to utilize gravity as well. So every time I would have a contraction I'd do the figure eights, and in my head I was just telling myself to relax, and relax my cervix, and kind of doing a little bit of visualization of baby coming down as well. So by about 4:30, 4:45, I was starting to get quite tired. My legs were just really sore. Because of the preeclampsia, I was really severely swollen in my legs and my ankles, and I felt like my legs were honestly like tree trunks. They were massive, and they were getting really painful and really achy, just from standing up so long on them. And I knew I couldn't get through a contraction without the shower, but I just couldn't stand up in the shower any longer because of my legs. So I was like, I felt like I was between a rock and a hard place really. I tried sitting on the ball to get obviously the pressure off my legs. I tried going on all fours in the shower, that sort of thing, but everything, I couldn't go on the ball because when I did I felt too much pressure, and then if I was on all fours like in the shower it just wasn't comfortable. So I felt really torn as to what to do. I wanted to get out of the shower and rest my legs for a little bit, but I couldn't even fathom dealing with a contraction without the hot water. And I knew that my midwife was going to examine me at 5 o'clock to see if I'd made any progress. The plan, as per the doctors, was that if I hadn't made any progress by 5 o'clock, that they wanted me to start the drip. So, and I guess in my head I was also thinking that, you know, if I hadn't made a lot of progress, you know, like maybe I needed an epidural, because this was just getting to the point where like my legs were just so sore. Like I was still dealing quite well with the contractions, it was just like my legs, I could not stand any longer. So come 5 o'clock my midwife examined me and I was 7 centimeters, but the baby was still quite high and had started to get like a little bit of swelling on his head as well. And so I guess the midwife in me was thinking, oh my gosh, like I have made all this progress but he's still really high. And in my head I was thinking like, great, does this mean that he's not going to come down, like, and you know, he's in a bad position? And I just was starting to overthink things, I think. And then my midwife also checked my blood pressure and it was 190 on 100, so ridiculously high as well. So I started talking to Ryan and I was telling him like, I think I need an epidural because he's still really high, and my blood pressure is really high, and I knew because my blood pressure was that high that the doctors would probably recommend that I got an epidural, because the epidural can drop your blood pressure. And I just started to overthink it. Obviously the midwife in me just took over and I was starting to think all this stuff, but I was still thinking like, oh, but if I get an epidural I have no chance of actually turning him into a better position if he's in a bad position, and then am I setting myself up for a cesarean because I've gotten this epidural and I can't mobilize. So all of these things are going through my head, and I started to tell them to Ryan, and he was like, no, like you don't want an epidural, and was just like reassuring me that that is not what I wanted. Meanwhile, I feel like at this point in my labor is when things like just went really quickly, and I just started to really just be like not even be able to comprehend what was happening. I don't know how to explain it. At this point, yeah, the rest of my pregnancy, the rest of my labor feels like a bit of a blur, but basically I started to vocalize to Ryan my feelings, and I even said to my midwife that I am losing it, and she was like, "You're losing what?" And I said, "My head. I'm losing my head. I don't know what I'm doing." And looking back on it now, I realized that I was starting to go into transition, but at the time I had no idea that that was what was happening. And because of my blood pressure, the midwife had to call the doctor in, and the doctor came in, checked my blood pressure again, and I think it was like 180 on 98 or something like that. So they gave me some medication to help with my blood pressure. I don't remember taking the medication, but apparently I did. And after that, the doctor came back again, and I think my blood pressure was still high. I don't remember the exact readings. Obviously I was concentrating on other things, and the doctor noticed that I had started to do some involuntary pushing. So basically when I would have a contraction, if I had a strong contraction, it would make me want to push or bear down. And by this stage, like, because I was losing it, my midwife had suggested that I tried to use some gas, which I did use. It didn't take the pain away, but it was enough to take the edge off so that I could really concentrate on relaxing my cervix again. Because after that examination, and after I sort of started to lose my head, I was starting to freak out, and I wasn't concentrating on relaxing my body and relaxing my cervix. And I was saying that to Ryan, I'm like, I can't relax. Again, because I wasn't in the shower anymore. So I started on the gas, and it was enough to take the edge off that I could really then focus on making sure that I was relaxing my cervix again. I had it on quite a low dose, but I feel like it really did affect me. I have to say I quite liked the gas. Like, I felt like it was probably a really good point in the labor for me to use it, and had I not used it, I don't know if I would have been able to progress that quickly from that 7 centimeter mark to him being born, because like I said, I was just losing it. Like, I was obviously starting to transition, and I lost my focus on what I was doing basically. So this really helped to get me through that. And basically I started involuntary pushing. Basically they just wanted to see what would happen, and then I was like, no, you know, like, I honestly didn't think I was ready to push, because I don't know, everything happened so quickly. And so at 6:25 my midwife examined me, and I was fully dilated, and his head was quite low, and I was ready to push. But basically I felt like I wasn't ready to push, because it just felt so different to what I had imagined it to feel like, which is really weird. I don't know what I imagined it to feel like, but yeah, I had quite a lot of pain when I was pushing, and I thought that was because I still had my, like, some cervix there, but obviously there wasn't. And as soon as my midwife said there wasn't, I think I felt a lot more reassured that I could follow my body and do what my body was telling me to do. But basically after I got him to a point, like, I felt like I had strong contractions, which made me really want to bear down, and I was pushing well, and then all of a sudden my contractions started to slow down, and I just felt like I wasn't getting the force behind the contraction. Like, there was no oomph behind the contraction to make me want to push. So we tried, like, I was sort of like sitting on my bum type thing, pushing, and so we thought would change my position, and we went onto all fours, and I think that slowed things down even more. So I was sniffing clary sage to try and get the contractions to come back, and I was kind of just breathing through the contractions, really, because they weren't as strong and they weren't giving me that urge to push, and I would try to push with some contractions and I just felt like it wasn't even worth it because I wasn't getting anywhere. So basically I ended up flipping back around and I was on my back in the like semi-recumbent position, and that funnily enough worked. I don't know why, because you know it goes against everything that you read in textbooks, but it worked for me. So I'm not really sure why, but it did. Like as soon as I flipped back around, my contractions decided to come back with a bit more force and to become a bit more frequent, which was good, which is what I needed. So after pushing for a while, I'm not sure how long, probably about half an hour or so, my midwife started to get a little worried about the tracing of the heart rate, so called the doctors in to review that, and basically at some stage, I'm not sure exactly when, I'm thinking it was about like 7:20, the baby's heart rate dropped down to 90 and stayed there for about 5 minutes, so it wasn't recovering. So normally it's quite normal for your baby's heart rate to drop while you push, but then once the contraction is finished, the heart rate should go back up to where it had been sitting before. And basically he didn't do that. I wasn't really paying attention at this point. Like I was just so focused on what I needed to get done that I wasn't even really like listening to the monitor and listening to his heart rate or taking in what was happening around me. But basically the doctor came in and said that she needed to do a vacuum to get this baby out sooner, which obviously is not ideal, and she did say that she would have to cut an episiotomy as well. So basically everyone was getting ready and doing what they needed to do, and I in my head was just like, no, I need to push this baby out. And while they were getting set up and everything, I just like pushed with all of my might, and I was able to bring him far enough down that I did not have to have a vacuum, which was great. But I did end up with an episiotomy, which is not a huge deal, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. Obviously I would have preferred to have the time to be able to push him out at my own pace and to allow everything to stretch and that sort of thing, but by that stage I honestly didn't really care. I just wanted him out safely. So she cut an episiotomy. With the next push his head came out, and then with the next push again his body came out. The doctor that I had was really lovely. I had not met her before because we just got like a new rotation of doctors, and she basically was like, do you want to catch your baby? So she obviously the head came out, she birthed I pushed the shoulders, and then once the shoulders came out I put my hands down and grabbed him out, which was really, really amazing, because what it meant was as I grabbed him out and brought him up to my chest, Ryan and I were both able to see at the exact same time the gender. As I brought him up, we could see that he was a boy, and I brought him to my chest and I just looked at Ryan and I was like, did you see that? And he was like, yes. And then I basically burst out crying. So after the birth, like, he came out crying, he was fine, he didn't need to be taken to the pediatrician. The pediatrician came and just had a quick look at him while he was on my chest, skin to skin, and she was really happy with everything, and so she kind of just left, which was great. And then after he was born, we waited a little while to Clamber cut the cord, and then Ryan cut the cord, and then we tried to birth my placenta, and unfortunately while doing that the cord on my placenta snapped from the placenta, so that wasn't great. That obviously, when the cord snaps of the placenta, then you can't use the cord to deliver the placenta. So basically what would normally happen is you pull on the cord and the placenta comes out. In my case, the placenta did not come out. So the cord came out, but the placenta was still up inside. So my midwife did try to like put her hand in and like physically grab the placenta and stuff, and that just wasn't working. It was obviously quite painful as well because I didn't have any pain relief, and yeah, she wasn't able to get it. So they called the doctors in. They had a look with the speculum and they could see the placenta, like, but they just couldn't get to it. So what we thought we would do is get me upright and try to like sit on the toilet or something like that and utilize gravity to try and get it out. But unfortunately, as soon as I sat up, I got really dizzy and lightheaded and faint. So I wasn't able to do that, which was really annoying. I really would have liked to have tried that, but I just wasn't able to physically. So what it meant was that I had to go to theatre to have it manually removed, with some decent pain relief on board. So I did have, I'm pretty sure I had like a good hour in birth suite with him while they were trying to get the placenta out and stuff. But I wasn't really able to feed him. He did like latch on and have like a few sucks, but he wasn't really interested in feeding just yet. So I ended up going to theatre and Ryan got to stay with him and do skin to skin with him so that at least he was getting that skin to skin time. I went to theatre and they gave me a spinal, which is kind of like an epidural, but they go like a little bit deeper and it completely numbs you. And once that was working, they did the manual removal and apparently it was quite easy. The placenta came away fine, and they repaired my episiotomy over there as well, which kind of worked out really well that I had that pain relief on board because I did not feel them stitching me at all. And had I not had that, I would have had to have like just local anesthetic, which I'm sure would have been fine. But you know, having the spinal was good because I didn't feel anything at all. Unfortunately, towards the end of that procedure, I started to feel like my jaw was hurting and that my arms were starting to get heavy, which is a sign that the spinal block was coming up higher really than it needed to. So basically, normally they would numb you to about the top of your belly or just underneath your breast. And by this stage my breasts were numb and half my arms were numb, so about to my elbow was numb, and then from my elbow down was tingly, like pins and needles, sort of like, you know, if you've been sitting on your leg for a while and you get that pins and needles sensation, it was kind of like that. So I told the anaesthetist that was what was happening. And he obviously started to get a little bit worried because if it comes up too high it can affect your breathing. So he was keeping a close eye on me. When I went into recovery, they obviously told them that my block was high, and they tried to sit me up to try and get some of that local anesthetic to move down and to sort of help with the block. But unfortunately, as soon as they sat me up, my blood pressure dropped. So it dropped to 70 on 40, which is quite a substantial drop when you consider how high it was sitting previously. So because my blood pressure was so low, I started to feel really, really sick. Like, yeah, it just felt really, really horrible. And at this stage I was in recovery, so Ryan and Bob came around to see me so that we could do skin to skin and that sort of thing. So because I was feeling so rotten, they had to lie me down flat again, which was the only way for them to maintain my blood pressure. But basically I looked at my hands and stuff and I was really, really pale. So they were trying to prick my finger so that they could get a hemoglobin, which is the red blood cells that carry oxygen around your body. And basically they were pricking me and I wasn't even bleeding. So then they called the doctor over to come try and get some blood from me, but because I was so swollen, they weren't able to get any blood from me. They had to use a drip that I had in my hand, so I ended up with a drip in each hand. and he managed to finally get some blood from there. I had a new midwife on now because my midwife had been there for well over 12 hours, so I had to go home, and had a new midwife come to look after me, and she was lovely. She was able to put Bub skin to skin with me, and because I was feeling so sick and because I was lying flat, she basically just held the baby there so that he could feed. I wasn't really able to tell if he was latched well because my nipples were numb, and I started like really shaking really badly, which was a side effect from the spinal. So we sort of joked around that baby's first feed was a milkshake because I was like shaking so badly, but she basically just held him there so that he was able to feed for as long as possible, which was really, really lovely of her, because I know just looking at her that she was really uncomfortable. So I stayed in recovery for about an hour, and eventually my blood pressure did come up, so they were happy for me to go up to the ward. So we went up to the ward about midnight by this stage, and once I got to the ward, Ryan had to go home. He was pretty tired, to be honest. It would have been great if he could have stayed, but rules are rules, and he had to go home. So I was sort of left there with this newborn baby, completely numb, right down. And I had lovely midwives who I knew, so that was great, and they were doing like half-hourly observations on me. So basically that night I did not sleep at all. The doctor came back to take more blood from me because the blood results that they got back were really, really bad, and they were hoping that it was just from the fact that they took it from a drip in my hand as opposed to like directly from a vein. So he eventually got another blood sample. I think it took a while. I ended up with pretty bad bruising actually on both of my arms from them trying to get blood from me. Eventually he was able to get more bloods and send them away, but basically my blood results came back that my sodium was really, really low. So my sodium levels, the original ones, came back at 121, and then with the second blood test they came back at 123, which was really low. I didn't know at the time, but one of the doctors was saying had my sodium been 120 I would have ended up in ICU, and it was 121. So they were pretty worried about me, but they didn't really let me know that they were that worried about me, which I'm kind of glad they didn't let me know, because I was in my false like little bubble thinking I was like, I knew I was sick, but I didn't think I was that sick. And so basically I had every type of doctor come see me. I had like the obstetricians, and I also had the obstetric medicine doctors come see me. They wanted to do a whole load of tests. They wanted to restrict the amount that I was allowed to drink, and they wanted to limit the amount of fluids that I was having. At this stage I had a catheter in, and I was just so swollen. As far as I can remember, my blood pressure was quite stable though, but basically for the next few days I wasn't really able to get out of bed much at all. For the first day I think I eventually got out and tried to have a shower, but I got dizzy and lightheaded as soon as I got up. I was very short of breath, and it turns out that my hemoglobin, which was completely normal prior to birth, it was 124, had dropped to about 70, which was quite low, and was the reason why I was feeling so short of breath, so dizzy, so lightheaded. So I ended up having 2 units of blood that Monday night, just because I was so symptomatic, and that did increase my hemoglobin. But to be honest, even now I do get short of breath if I walk up the stairs too quickly, or if I walk too fast. Like if I'm walking around I have to like take things slow and that sort of thing. Basically they were monitoring my urine output quite closely. Originally I wasn't doing what they required. So they would like me to do 30 mils of urine an hour, and originally I wasn't doing that. Then all of a sudden I was just doing ridiculous amounts of urine. In one day I did do 7 liters of urine. Luckily I had a catheter in because I wasn't able to even walk to the toilet to be able to empty my bladder that frequently. I would have just had to basically be sitting on the toilet constantly weeing, and that would not have been ideal. So I did have a catheter in, and I felt bad for the girls because they basically had to come and empty it so frequently. Eventually though, within a couple of days, I had the catheter out. I'd started to get rid of all the fluid, and my blood pressure stabilized, and basically my sodium reverted back to normal. They were a bit worried there that it reverted back too quickly, but in the end all of the tests and stuff that they did came back normal. I had ultrasounds of my kidneys which were normal, because basically they were thinking perhaps I had an underlying medical issue, which as far as I know all came back fine. I honestly think the reason why my sodium was that low was because when my blood pressure dropped a lot in theatre and in recovery, they gave me too much fluid, and because I was preeclamptic, you really have to limit the amount of fluid that I should have had, and I think they gave me way too much fluid, and that is why that all happened. So basically, yeah, my birth in itself, the birth was great. It went like obviously not as well as I would have liked. I would have preferred to have my water birth and go home 6 hours later and all of that, but at the end of the day I avoided a medical induction, which was the one thing I really did not want to do, and I had a vaginal birth, and I didn't have to have a vacuum, and I didn't have to have Syntocin on, so I felt like I'm pretty happy with how that all went. And obviously things afterwards kind of went a bit downhill. By day 3, I quickly realized that my milk was not progressing. My milk did not come in. The colostrum that I was getting was like 0.1 of a mil or even 0.2 of a mil of colostrum, which was not much at all, and I knew that he wasn't getting enough basically. So because within the first 24 hours he did like 5 or 6 wet nappies, and then by like day 3 he'd maybe like done 1 or 2, so I knew that he definitely wasn't getting enough from me, and we weighed him, and sure enough he had lost 12% of his body weight. So by that stage we had to give him formula to top him up, and I had a massive breakdown about that. I think I cried for like hours because I really didn't want to do it, but by that stage I just wanted to get home. I wanted him to be healthy, and I knew that, you know, because of everything that happened, my milk supply was probably not going to be where it needed to be. I'll also mention as well that at the 48-hour mark he did start to have some respiratory issues, and because he was a meconium Lycor baby, he did have to go down to special care for 24 hours for observation, which wasn't ideal because it did mean that we had to be separated. And again, when that happened, I had a little mini meltdown, and cried and cried and cried because he was downstairs and I was upstairs. Thankfully by this stage I was able to walk, be it very slowly, downstairs to go see him and to feed him and that sort of thing, and he did eventually come back up to me the next morning, which was great. But yeah, so basically I just wanted to get home, so I gave him the formula that, you know, I felt we probably needed to do at that stage. I had the lactation come see me and that sort of thing as well. So within the next day he had actually put on weight, which was great, and it meant that on the Friday we were able to go home. So basically he was born on the Sunday and we got to go home on the Friday. I was just so over it by then. I just wanted to go home. I just wanted to be in my own house. I felt like by that stage everything was starting to hit me about had happened and how sick I actually was. And I did have like a little meltdown and a big cry, and I guess all my colleagues would have seen that, but at that stage again I really didn't care. And yeah, I was just so over it. I just wanted to be home. So yeah, we got home on Friday. My milk took forever to come in. I think like a good 2 weeks for it to actually come in, and at this stage we are still having to top up with formula, but my milk supply is slowly increasing. I've had acupuncture to help it, I've had herbs, I have had lactation cookies, lactation balls, lactation tea. I had my placenta encapsulated as well, so I've been taking that. And also I am now on some domperidone or metilium, which is a medication that can help you increase your milk supply as well. So I'm doing all that. I'm doing lots of feeding. So he feeds actually quite well. He latches really well onto the breast, and then we're just topping up with formula as needed. Some days he can go several, like a good feed or two without needing a top up. Other times he'll need a top up after every feed. So we're kind of just playing it by ear at the moment. We're not having to increase our amount of formula that we're giving him, which is good, which like normally by this stage, he's almost 4 weeks old, we would have had to be increasing the amount of formula that he was having if he was purely just formula fed, but we haven't needed to do that, and we have actually managed to decrease the amount that he's having. So that is a good sign that my milk supply is slowly getting there. It's just such a blessing that he is so good at latching. He does have his moments, like especially during the night, he doesn't like to latch well. Like he kind of just really fussy with the breast, but I find if I give him like a minute of the bottle, just enough to like that he gets some milk, and then like take the bottle out and quickly put him on the boob, then he will stay on the boob. So kind of like trying to trick him a little bit there, and that seems to work. So yeah, basically that is my birth story in a nutshell. I told you that this video was going to be really long. I apologize, but I'm pretty sure I have covered everything in there. Like again, it was kind of just like a bit of a blur there towards the end of my labor, but I think I've managed to mention everything in there.